science is here. We can no longer say we did not know. What we do with it is now up to all of us.
The next few years will test global society as this technology continues to improve at a rapid pace. We can choose to either empower people or concentrate power.
As AI capabilities continue to grow, if they continue, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is likely to grow.
We ask, how can we ensure that technology becomes a tool for inclusion, not exclusion?
It can diagnose disease, write software, discover new medicines, and soon could transform every part of our lives. But who decides how it's used? And if artificial intelligence is shaping the future, who gets to shape artificial intelligence? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is AI. Well, over the past few years, AI has moved from science fiction into everyday life. But as the technology accelerates, so do the questions surrounding it. Depending on the headline, AI is either humanity's greatest opportunity or its greatest threat. What isn't in dispute is the pace. Artificial intelligence is developing faster than almost any technology before it. Here's a look now at some of the numbers.
Last year alone, the world invested nearly $600 billion in artificial intelligence. Governments and companies are racing to lead what many see as the next technological revolution. But the power to build the world's most advanced AI is concentrated in the hands of a few. Around 75% of frontier AI computing capacity is in the US. Another 15% is in China, leaving most countries to rely on technology developed elsewhere. Artificial intelligence reflects the people who build it and the data it's trained on. Yet women make only around 30% of the global AI workforce. UN agencies warn that imbalance can reinforce gender bias, from recruitment software and facial recognition to AI-generated abuse that disproportionately targets women and girls. The inequalities don't stop there. The World Bank's World Development Report 2026 warns AI could widen the gap between rich and poor countries because access depends on computing power, data, digital infrastructure, and skilled workers. But public opinion remains divided. People see AI boosting productivity and creativity while worrying about misinformation, privacy, and the future of work. 59% of people worldwide say artificial intelligence will bring them more benefits than drawbacks. Yet 52% say AI products and services also make them nervous. More than 2/3 believe AI will significantly change everyday life within the next 3 to 5 years.
And while the technology races ahead, our understanding, our regulations, and our institutions struggle to keep pace.
Some might claim that governance is the enemy of innovation. But innovation needs guardrails. The technologies we trust most, in aviation, in medicine, in nuclear energy, and beyond, earn that trust because we acted to hold their makers to account. If AI is to be powerful, it must be governed. If AI is to be trusted, those who build it must be accountable. If AI is to be global, it must be fair. And if AI is to serve the future, it must not consume the future.
So that's why the United Nations has assembled an independent international scientific panel. Unlike many of the voices dominating today's AI debate, these are not the executives racing to build the next breakthrough model. They are the scientists, legal scholars, economists, and public policy experts tasked with something different: understanding AI's impact before it outpaces our ability to govern it. Now, their first report, published in early July, reaches a simple conclusion. Artificial intelligence could transform healthcare education, and scientific discovery. But without stronger international cooperation, better evidence, and more inclusive governance, those benefits and the power behind them risk benefiting the few while disadvantaging the others. Now, one of the 40 experts behind that report is Professor of High Energy Physics Bilge Demirkoz, who joins me now here in the studio to talk more about the future of AI and what her research has revealed. Bilge, thank you so much for being with us. Just have to note that about the tiniest fraction of the knowledge in your brain actually fit into that UN report. So I'd like to tap into more of that broader knowledge and start, however, with the downside, if possible, so that hopefully we can work our way up from there. What worries you the most about what you know about AI?
Well, Andrea, it's really a pleasure to be here in your studio today. Our report is a sum of the knowledge of the 40 people. Definitely, It reflects knowledge bigger than my brain. And it's a summary. But I think one of the things that our report clearly outlines is a lack of evidence, the evidence gap between what the frontier models are doing right now. They're running towards an uncertain goal, while we are lagging behind, trying to collect evidence. So I think the biggest threat to us is this, how to manage this gap.
Yeah.
And in the meanwhile, we have seen things such as mental health issues from young kids. We have seen an IQ drop among MIT students who use AI models, postgraduate students. We have seen that governments are struggling to understand cybersecurity issues from these AI agents, these armies of AI agents. And then there is, so I think the answer is not, unfortunately.
It's a vast answer, I can imagine.
Yes.
But you as a professor, you see your students, and you're talking about MIT students, their IQ is dropping. How does that feel to you as an educator?
Well, I was a student there as well, so it is a bit scary, honestly. So I try not to use these large language models, these chatbots available on the web. But we use AI models to understand our data, the data that we collect up on the International Space Station. We're collecting cosmic rays, these extremely high energy particles that fly through our detector in space, and we're using that data to understand the universe, the building blocks of the universe, and we're using models that we trained ourselves, specific to our needs in space. And honestly, from a scientific perspective, that's wonderful.
Right.
And we see the good as well. We see the good in health services, in agriculture. We have given several examples of the good that can come out of specific AI models that are tailored to the needs of a specific area. But when you talk about more generalized tools, it's so hard to foresee the future and to see how that will affect societal cohesion, what it means for trust in the public. We were just chatting a little bit about now more than half of the pages online are now generated by AI. Crawling through the web and generating content. So what can you trust?
And yeah, exactly, because a lot of that content is flawed and it's growing exponentially all the time. And there's only so much quality control that can be done, because in the end, the quality control is at the hands of human beings who are also flawed, have different judgments. But you talk about
Thank you for bringing that up, yes.
That's something we'll get into. I'm going to bring in a few other panelists too to talk a little bit more about that. But you're saying in terms of incredibly complex data sets, AI is incredibly beneficial. But at the lower levels, if I can put it that way, at the lower levels where it should be human judgment and human creativity and rational thinking, I guess, that's where it becomes a real downside.
Well, we have commoditized a lot of things as human beings. We've commoditized cars, cell phones. So in a way, like human communications, how humans behave, like eyes are cameras now, as you can see us. So all of the things that relate to humans, all of our senses and all of our functions have already been commoditized. And now we're at a new inflection point in human history, where now we're considering that intelligence, so the actual cognitive behavior of human beings, can be modeled by something other than human beings, which it is a scary thought indeed. And 2 weeks ago in Geneva, there was the first inaugural meeting, the Global Summit on AI Governance, where all of the UN member states came together to discuss how to govern at this inflection point, what action to take. And obviously, this was the initial beginning of the conversation, but I'm so happy to see that more than 100 countries gave reports, gave intervention, had notes to say that they support some discussion on what a governance structure could look like, because right now governance is highly fragmented across the world.
Right.
There are over 40 different forms of governance which are not complete, and none of them can, again, foresee what's coming in the future.
So you're glad to see at least the United Nations in that respect being as proactive as they can be, I guess, with what's happening right now. But the question is, are legislators actually ready to manage, the pros and cons of this technology for the benefit of all of us? And that's the bigger question, because we were looking at how power is really being concentrated in too few hands. First of all, mostly between the United States and China, but also among the wealthiest AI developers themselves, including people like Elon Musk. And I'm going to bring in our panelists in just a second, but you start that answer. How concerned should we be about the concentration, the power of AI and its development being in too few hands?
I am very concerned. I think everybody, all 40 of us on the panel are very concerned, and we tried to voice that well in our report. We tried to give a balanced view of the opportunities that can help humanity and the risks which face us all. And especially this fragmentation where if there's one country that doesn't govern AI, then what happens? Now we have to act together as a humanity to make sure that we all seek the benefit. And then we have companies that are now self-reporting only. So how much can you trust them if they are only telling us what reports that they see? Right. Also, there are reports that AI judges itself to be better than it is. It also doesn't lend itself to closing itself. So there has been cases reported where the AI model refused to shut itself down.
Right.
So in such a case, how do we go from there? How do we, if the world is fragmented, this will cause, the risk will multiply.
Okay.
We have to act as a world together, not just as a world, but across even international waters and out into space.
I'll tell you what, let's broaden out our discussion now, get some further opinions, and I'll welcome two new panelists. Joining us from Charlottesville, Virginia, Assistant Professor of Data Science and Media Studies at the University of Virginia, Mona Sloane, and from Brussels, non-resident Senior Fellow with the Tech Policy Program at the Center for European Policy Analysis, William Echikson. Thanks all so much for being with me. William, let's get your opinion then. Are governments responding appropriately to the unknown, and are the companies behind AI cooperating? And if they're not, do you expect them to start cooperating for the greater good?
Well, what I heard sounds like a lot of doom and gloom, too much doom and gloom for me. The experience in Brussels was Europe tried to regulate. It put forward an AI Act, and I think pretty much everyone agrees that it's been a gigantic failure. It was premature. They didn't really understand the technology, and now they're saying, well, the biggest danger is we're going to fall too far behind. So the things that people are talking about in Europe now is how to catch up in AI, not really how to regulate it. And they're trying to pare back the AI Act. Look, I agree with some of the analysis. I would say that if you look at the UK's AI Safety Institute, that's a good example of a start in professionally, transparently giving danger or reviewing the AI models. But I think we will see most countries want to embrace AI because it does offer great possibilities and a boost to the economy. And we're going to see that more than the doom and gloom that I've just heard.
Okay, I hope you're right. I wonder if Mona thinks you're right, because we also mentioned in our opener, Mona, that artificial intelligence actually reflects the people who build it and the data that it's trained on. So how much does that concern you about its positive trajectory? In that, again, it's in the hands of a few who are judging it, quality controlling it, and might not be on the same level as the broader user base.
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thank you for having me. I agree and disagree with William, I have to say. I agree that the doom and gloom sort of polarization is really not helping us. AI is here, it's going to stay. It is an enormously impactful and also powerful technology. However, it is at its core a prediction system. It is a system that learns from data that has captured the past. It learns from decisions that people who collected that data in the past have made. And so it is kind of linear, right? It sort of paints a trajectory from past to future. And that includes inequality. Andrea, you alluded to that earlier, right? There's a huge risk that as a scaling instrument, AI systems can actually scale these inequalities that we've seen in the past. And we have enormous evidence of harms that people have already experienced. Now, what I do think is helpful, and this is why I sort of agree with William, is to actually meaningfully define AI and define AI vis-a-vis the industry that has developed around it. And that includes not just the model makers, but that also includes data center companies, for example, as well as chips companies. And I think it's helpful to think about AI as infrastructure. And once we do that, I think we have a more meaningful way of thinking about how we can more fairly distribute the benefits and mitigate the harms.
Okay. Let me come back to Bilge then, because we had spoken earlier about the potential for AI kind of being overestimated. And, might the perfection that people are expecting from it actually be too prone to the flaws and the mistakes of the humans that are doing quality control? Are they expecting too much from a perfect technology? And if they are, what happens? Because there is no accountability once the machines are doing the work for us.
That's a good question, Andrea. I think one of the problems right now that we are facing is that we have no standards. And one of the things that I think that came out of this meeting 2 weeks ago is that now there is a move towards the standardization. How do you value AI, the good, and how do you evaluate the risks? How do you make sure that it will respond to the command to shut itself down, for example, right? The benchmarks are, every company uses their own different benchmark. And rightfully so, because there are certain AI models that are geared towards this task versus those that are geared towards that task. So how do you do a standardization process? I value that the dialogue has begun. And there is now a lab in Valencia who's going to work also on the possibly the standardization and governance techniques. And it is very clear that we have to move. This has to be a process rather than one standard, one shoe that fits all. The other panelists brought up the EU Act, and I agree that it was maybe premature, but maybe we cast it in a different light. This is the evidence gap, right? Yeah. The AI models that can now break out of a jail, there has been an example of a cybersecurity experiment where they had an AI model jailed inside a certain cybersecurity precautionary jail. and it managed to break out. And this happened after our report. So we couldn't even report on it. So things are moving so fast that I think the world might have to change its governance structure even. That we might have to make laws that are moving fast as well, which is not something you were used to as humanity.
There are so many factors at play, and when I had alluded to the fact that are we overestimating AI, William, I'll come back to you because another issue so many people are talking about is the cost of AI that had been underestimated from the beginning. We didn't know how severely energy intensive AI processing would be. So the question now is, will it remain cost prohibitive to the fact, and we had mentioned earlier, potentially allowing this technology to become the Concorde jet of the tech space, whereby there was so much hope and potential that everything was going to be revolutionized and changed irrevocably, when the truth was it was too dangerous, too cost prohibitive to ever really take hold. Do you think the potential is in the AI space for that same end?
Well, I think there are parts of the AI space that could be turned into Concords and go too far. But overall, AI seems to be much more spread throughout our economy in a much bigger way than the supersonic jet was. And so I do think that all the investment that is going into this in the United States is boosting the economic growth there, whereas Europe feels, where I am, that it's sort of missing out on that growth and is caught in stagnation and becoming less and less competitive. So I think the concern here in Brussels would be, how can we catch up? How can we make sure that we're not dependent or under the knee of the American technology and Chinese technology?
Okay. I mean, Mona, we're seeing reports now also about how the cost of using AI costs more than the workers themselves, and that the companies might actually be firing their own customers, leaving them with effectively no income to buy the products they're producing with this AI. How much do you see that conundrum as being something that could hold this AI trajectory back significantly?
I think we're going to see and hear more of that, Andrea. We've seen an enormous hype actually building around AI, and we've seen enormous layoffs that are actually not evidence-based, but that are based on sort of the narrative that AI will be hugely disruptive across all of the economy, not specific verticals, but generally that we don't need human capacity, human judgment, human relations anymore. And we see that actually affecting our graduates very much, who have trouble finding entry-level jobs. And now people who work with AI in companies are seeing their AI budgets being blown already. They are halfway through the year and they've used up all their tokens, and there is no actual evidence in certain departments and industries that there is productivity gains. People have been fired. It's enormously costly to find people, hire people, retain people, train people. So I think we're going to see sort of a swinging back of the pendulum, but I think the sort of social contract that we have between graduates and between workers and employers and between governments and citizens, that is really being sort of fractured a little bit by this massively powerful hype. And I think we're going to see the political implications of that very soon.
In what form? Political implications?
I think that questions around unemployment, questions around data centers will play a role in elections. At least here in the United States, we've already seen that in sort of local elections, that folks are upset about data centers. That's neither here nor there. There are questions around infrastructure build out and the question, how should we actually invest in infrastructure? I'm not against infrastructure build out at all, but I think there needs to be public accountability, and that is lacking right now. And that sort of comes at a moment where we're seeing sort of unemployment hitting, a younger generation. And I think that's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. Tell you what, final few minutes, so I'll bring it back to the studio. And Bilge, this AI discovery journey that you've in particular been on is nowhere near complete. So what's really next for you? What merits the most research and focus going forward?
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andrea. For me, what merits the most research is we have to make AI energy efficient. Our brain is amazing. It's the work of millions and billions of years of evolution, which now we can calculate things with a brain with only 20 watts. That's less than what a normal computer uses. So it's really an impressive calculation machine. Not just calculation, but also taking in data, analyzing, and giving you results, and moving and making decisions every day. So this energy problem is not just an energy problem, it's also a cooling problem. And one of the things that is now being floated is data centers in space. There's a certain company which plans on now putting 1.2 million satellites, each on the order of tons and maybe even more, into space. Now, I work in space, as you know, so I'm really worried about this. There are many reasons why. First, how much energy, how much carbon footprint does it cost the Earth to put so many satellites in space? Two, what is the end of life pay on the Earth when all these satellites, they will eventually enter the Earth and burn? What about those metal oxides? How do they interfere how do they act in our atmosphere? I'm really worried about that. I'm really worried about the fact that if there is a big solar storm, we are quite well aware that if a big solar storm happens, it happened in 1859, it can take out all our satellites. What if it takes out all our infrastructure? I mean, we were already worried about GPS and use of the loss of telecommunication satellites, and now we're going to worry about the loss of all of our data in space.
Right.
So,
and when it happened in 1859, it only took out telegraph channels, which people could easily learn to deal without. It was a huge hindrance in communications. But now we're looking at everything, our banking, everything goes into our phones now. And you're talking about we're not able to test for these new technologies to see what the fallout would be.
Indeed, I'd like to mention something that the UN Secretary General Guterres said at the end of this discussions. He said, it has always been up to the scientists to prove the risks, to show like the ozone layer, the hole was caused by these gases, right? We had to prove it, and then only then the companies would actually accept the blame and take action. We have to put the risk management on the companies now. We have to hold them accountable, and we have to make sure that they do not damage the environment. We cannot do it later. This has to be, it cannot be an afterthought. It has to be a pre-thought.
Right. That is no easy task. Bilge, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd sincerely like to thank all of my guests so much for being with us on this fascinating edition, but unfortunately we're out of time. So thanks to our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.